The start to Canto 3 is abrupt. I am the way into the doleful city. I am the way into eternal grief. I am the way to a forsaken race. Justice it was that moved my great creator. Divine omnipotence created me, and highest wisdom joined with primal love before me. Nothing but eternal things were made, and I shall last eternally. Abandon every hope, all you who enter. Imagine, if you will, just turning the page and finding that. You don't know who's talking. You have no idea, especially in those first few lines. It's just words on the page. Now, in a different edition, in different editions, you will have you'll have the printing set off just a little. They'll use a different font. Maybe they'll go all caps. Sometimes it'll be in quotation marks, this, to just tell you that something else is going on here. But imagine this in manuscript form when it is just the words on the page, nothing else. The words on the page. And what are those words? I am the way into the doleful city. I am the way into eternal grief. I am the way to a forsaken race. That's something. We have no idea who's talking. We have no idea where this is coming from. Is this one of the characters? Is this the narrator? What's going on? We are uncertain. The poem always shifts us into modes of uncertainty. This is very intentional. This is not just the poem being fuzzy. This is not Dante forgetting to tell us who said something. This is Dante making us confront this sudden aggression, this assertion of an individual character on the page. I am leads those first three lines. We have to wonder what that is supposed to be and what it can be. Is it a character? Is it the narrator? Is it the author himself? Is it Dante slipping his own voice in there? I particularly like, excuse me, the original Italian. Bear with me here. Per me si va nella città dolente, per me si va nell'eterno dolore, per me si va tra la perduta gente. Pardon my pronunciation there. Per me. Which, some of the better translations, quite frankly, I like a little bit more in that, through me. The way to the dolorous city, through me, the way to pain everlasting, through me, the way to the souls of the damned, through me. And in Italian, per me. You can be forgiven for thinking I am spitting all over you when I say that. Per me. Try and say per me without spitting. You can't. And there's a reason for that. Dante here is being very cagey with who is speaking. But I think it's Dante himself. Not the character, not the narrator. It is Dante himself. We learn at the end that it is an inscription over the gate to hell. That's at the end. In the beginning, all we have is per me, through me. And here I want to go biographical. Imagine Dante's position here. Dante has been robbed of everything he cares about in life. He has been thrown out of his home. He has been exiled from everything he knows and loves. He has been kicked out of his own family by his own family, or at least his in-laws. He has had everything taken away from him. all he has is his mind. All he has is his imagination. All he has is his talent, his ability to craft this world, to build this world, this design of a world he sees in the universe around him. So he is, in effect, rebuilding the universe. And he's been hinting at it for the first two canti, telling you, yeah, we're going to go on a little tour of all God's creation, and you're going to get to see the mind of God, right? Yeah, you want to see that? Yeah, okay, let's go do that. Oh, you want to do that? Okay, great. Yeah, that's good. You want to do that? You want to do that? You got to do it through me. Per me. Per me. He is asserting right there, and again, there are no quotation marks here in the original manuscript. Per me. You have to go through this. You can take everything away from me, but now I own the world. I built this world. You want access to it? You want to see what God's mind is really like? You got to go through me. So he goes from being nothing, thrown aside by his own people, thrown aside by everything that he knows in life, and he climbs up out of that mud and says, no, I am not nothing. I am everything. And if you want to share in that, if you want to know, what I can see, you have to go per me. That is such a defiant stance. And think about how timid the character Dante has been in the poem up to this point. Think about how frightened he has admitted to being, how hesitant he has been about going into this new place. But now this other side of that personality comes out, the side of the author, perhaps. But this other voice in the poem asserts itself, says, no, we will not be afraid. We will charge ahead. That is a heroic mode. He is taking back the heroic voice for his poem. He is demanding recognition of himself as a human being within God's creation. So again, it is this curious balancing act between submission to the enormity of God's universe and the individuality and integrity of one man alone in confronting it. It's a majestic moment. It's a terrifying moment. And it is also, quite frankly, a great tease. Because after the kind of slow, meandering of the first two introductory canti, we are smacked in the face and led along, lured by our own dirtiest impulses. You want to see pain? You want to see lust? You want to see the darkest side of humanity? Come with me. I know the way. Ooh-ah. That is amazing. That is abrupt. That is just overwhelming. And notice what follows after that. I saw these words spelled out in somber colors inscribed along the edge above a gate. Oh, okay, so now I know who's speaking. After leading me along in that uncertainty, the poem pulls me back and says, no, wait, it's just an inscription over a gate. But look there. I saw these words spelled out in somber colors. And then Master, I said, these words I see are cruel. He answered me, speaking with experience. He answered. Dialogue. Words are just being pointed out very explicitly here. The word words appears there, telling you that these are words, reminding you that these are all words. What else is words beyond the words over the gate? Well, the poem. And if you're reading those words and they are feeling aggressive towards you, well, what about the poem's words? They are the same. They all appear the same. Again, get rid of what editors might do or publishers might do with how they arrange the print. They're all the same words. And so we need to react to them individually. We need to judge them individually. We need to be aware of their effect on us. We need to be aware of who is speaking to whom at what time. We need to understand the context, which for those first two tercets, we don't. We don't know who is talking. We don't know what the context is. And we need to understand that we need to figure that out. Sometimes life is like that. Stuff will come at you very quickly and you don't know how to handle it. Certainly, Dante did not expect to be exiled when he left Florence for Rome. But everything comes at you in a rush and you have to make sense of it. You have to look out at all the chaos and find the order within it. That's what the emphasis on words is doing. And Dante will continually reference words throughout this canto and the poem at large, pointing out that this is reading, this is a poem, consciously reminding us all that we need to be aware that it is a poem. We need to be aware that it is artifice. We need to be aware that it is something to be interpreted, something that we need to lean into and not just accept passively. Here sighs and cries and shrieks of lamentation echoed throughout the starless air of hell. At first these sounds resounding made me weep. Tongues confused, a language strained in anguish with cadences of anger, shrill outcries and raucous groans that joined with sounds of hands, raising a whirling storm that turns itself forever through that air of endless black, like grains of sand swirling when a whirlwind blows. And I, in the midst of all this circling horror, began, "Teacher, what are these sounds I hear? What souls are these so overwhelmed by grief?" More focus on interpretation. This time, sounds, but sounds are very much like words, quite frankly. They need to be understood. They need to be broken down. We need to just attend to them. And that cacophony in the way they are expressed, quite frankly, it's like a little montage. Tongues confused, a language strained in anguish, with cadences of anger, shrill outcries and raucous groans that join with sounds of hands, raising in a whirling storm that turns. It is a montage that we are being swept up in. All of this language is being thrown at us, and we're maybe getting caught up in the swell. We're maybe getting transported passively along into the poem, swept up beyond our reason, beyond our grounding into the world of the poem. And that is what the poem is trying to do. But should we let it? Should we give ourselves over to the poem passively, or should we maintain a kind of objectivity? Should we maintain a kind of dispassionate perspective on the poem? Oh, yeah, I know. Okay, now the poem is going to start to, try and sweep me off my feet. But I'm a little too smart for that. The poem is having some fun with that. And so you see him turn at that point. You see the Dante character turn to Virgil and look for guidance. And he does so in a very curious way. He asks specifically about the souls he sees around him, all of these souls that have recently died. And you see a human instinct of curiosity that is repeated throughout. And this tends to get lost, I would say, in a lot of interpretations. The basic mode of this poem is that Dante goes to different segments of hell, sees a lot of sufferers, speaks to one or more of them, and learns about them. Thus, they explain to him their particular function within the larger structure, their particular role within God's design. And this is happening in a couple of different ways. This is explained to us in dialogue. All of the characters tell us what they're going through. And that puts a perspective on the whole dynamic. That tells us not that objectively this is why they are there. We are shown their perspective on why they are there, their perspective on life itself. And we can then understand or deduce or interpret their role within the larger universe. So it is effectively another confluence of point of view, another point of reminding us that these things should not be taken at face value. They need to be interpreted. But it also shows Dante's essentially social instinct. He is always talking to these people. And here he talks to Virgil and says, well, what's going on with these people? Maybe he's feeling sorry for them. Feeling pity is something that you will see repeatedly. Always watch for that word pity. But he feels drawn to them in some way. He's not just, observing them and saying, yeah, well, sucks to be them. He is drawn. He is involved. He is sacrificing that objective role so that he can get swept up, just like the readers were perhaps just swept up a moment ago in the sounds. There's always that toggle between surrendering and reserving, between giving yourself over and holding yourself back, between the individuality of a single human being and the larger communion of the universe. And the conversation that he has with Virgil makes clear that some of the characteristics of the afterlife, of hell, the earthiness of it comes across. You are seeing the beginnings of human civilization refracted through a divine judgment. A lot of the figures we will be seeing are coincidentally Italian, specifically from Florence. A lot of them are political, a lot of them are religious figures, and they are people that Dante has known personally. Dante shows his disdain for some of his fellow Florentines in this passage. And I, in the midst of all this circling horror, began, Teacher, what are these sounds I hear? What souls are those so overwhelmed by grief? And he to me, this wretched state of being is the fate of those sad souls who lived a life, but lived it with no blame and with no praise. They are mixed with that repulsive choir of angels, neither faithful nor unfaithful to their God, who undecided stood but for themselves. Heaven, to keep its beauty, cast them out, but even hell itself would not receive them, and to fear the damned might glory over them. And I, Master, what torment do they suffer that force them to lament so bitterly? He answered, I will tell you in a few words. These wretches have no hope of truly dying, and this blind life they lead is so abject it makes them envy every other fate. The world will not record their having been here. Heaven's mercy and its justice will turn from them. Let's not discuss them. Look and pass them by. The outrage at people who won't make a decision, the outrage that Dante feels at everybody in politics, perhaps, who just didn't come out and voice any support for him, who went along with his enemies. When Dante was out of town, when Dante was in Rome, when Dante was out on his job, his emissary to the Pope, and they exiled him, and nobody, supposedly, stood up for his defense. Nobody took his side. They just said, well, okay, I'll go along with that. Those who lived it with no blame and no praise. They're just sort of wishy-washy. They're not even worth considering. At the end, let's not discuss them, look and pass them by. Always that hostility towards these people who don't have the guts to say what they mean, to use their words very significantly. Virgil says, I will use few words to say this, who refuse to use their words to declare themselves, to take a side, to show in a political arena that they will stand up for what they believe in and not just go along. These people are inconsiderate. They can't get into heaven and they can't get into hell. They are just not worth either place. Neither place wants them. To be rejected from hell, to be kept behind the velvet rope from hell. Consider how pathetic you have to be for that. Heaven, to keep its beauty, cast them out, but even hell itself would not receive them, to fear the damned might glory over them. They are the lowest of the low of insignificance, not necessarily of sin value, but just pathetic in their nature. And you can see in this Dante just getting in one little twist on people who might not be guilty of any other sin, but who, because of their failure to stand up for him, refuse to help at all and thus are condemned. So you get this repeated refrain of Dante saying, oh, that guy, I know him. He was awful to me, and now he's in hell. And of course, it's Dante who puts him in hell. So there is this very clear agenda of vengeance going on here, where this is a kind of fan fiction, wish casting moment, where he who has been the victim of all this, who is so emphatic that now all you people are going to be subject to me, per me. He is very deliberate in placing people he disagrees with, people who were his opponents or enemies in life, or just people he didn't like personally on one level or another, in hell, in suffering very specific forms of punishment. Those specific forms of punishment, again, looking ahead, are always curiously constructed. It is a framework known as contrapasso, CONTROPASSO, where the form of punishment mirrors, in a way, the sin that engenders it. It's as if it's a way of justifying the punishment through a kind of act of free will. All of the sinners in hell chose a particular path, made decisions about their lives to sin in a particular way. And that is all rather abstract on earth. But then in the afterlife, those abstract terms become physical, become a real manifestation of that sin made into a punishment. So on earth, in the material world, the sin is abstract. In the immaterial world, let's say, of the afterlife, the sin becomes concrete. It's a neat little reversion, and Dante is always doing these reversions. So you get that. So we will see repeatedly different sins being punished in very specific ways that reflect back on the sin itself. It's not all just, ooh, how can I torture people today? It is, okay, what is a good torture to represent the actual sin that caused it? And that can be sort of fun to watch that go out, because it is an enormously ambitious creation for him to embark on, where he is going to justify torture, where he's going to justify punishment, when he's going to do it in a kind of divine way, because it is the mind of God that he's entering in here, and God will not do something, according to Catholic orthodoxy, God would not do something that is imperfect, that is haphazard, that is just coincidental and random. He would do something that has purpose, that has meaning, that has an almost mathematical engineering exactitude to it. And so you get that. And the characters of these people that come through are just quite, I find, amusing, because you get a great mix of classical characters from history, from mythology, from literature, from political history, from the current political scene, as if he's ripping from the headlines. And in one very notable version that we'll see very soon in this, you will see a person who, well, it's not very soon, it's a little bit down the line. You'll see one character who is still walking around on Earth when Dante, effectively casts him into the afterlife, and he just sort of throws it away with a line saying, "Well, yeah, that guy down on Earth, he's just a function of Satan or something like that. But really, he's dead, and he's here being punished at the same time." And you can imagine the effect that this would have on the guy who is still walking around on the Earth, and he's being told, or he's having to read, that Dante has cast him into hell already. It's fun. Dante is beautifully vindictive in a very human way, and that is amusing, to say the least. But always, always, always be conscious of that amusement. Be conscious of that kind of tickling feeling that you get when you see somebody just a little bit sadistically punished. How we can sort of join in on that, because the poem is going to judge you for that. The poem is going to force you into another perspective to see yourself among those sinners too. Watch for that as we move on.